For more than 2,000 years, one story has refused to die. A civilization so powerful it rivaled the greatest empires of the ancient world. A city filled with astonishing engineering, immense wealth, towering temples. And then, in a single catastrophic day and night, it vanished beneath the sea. Most historians call Atlantis a myth. Others believe it hides a forgotten chapter of human history. But what if both sides are missing something? Because scattered across the Mediterranean and far beyond, archaeologists have uncovered discoveries that raise an unsettling question. Was Plato inventing a moral tale, or preserving the memory of a real civilization lost to time? Tonight, we follow the evidence wherever it leads. Some stories survive because they entertain us. Others survive because they refuse to let go. Atlantis belongs to the second kind. Few legends have captured humanity's imagination as completely as the tale of an island civilization swallowed by the sea. It has inspired explorers, philosophers, scientists, filmmakers, treasure hunters, and dreamers for more than 23 centuries. Entire expeditions have been launched in search of it. Thousands of books have been written. Countless maps claim to reveal its location. Yet, despite all the speculation, one question remains astonishingly difficult to answer. Where did the story come from? If you've always been fascinated by the world's greatest historical mysteries, consider subscribing to Chronicle Nexus, where history meets mystery. Every week, we explore the line between documented history and the legends that continue to challenge what we think we know. To understand Atlantis, we have to travel back to ancient Greece. Around 360 BC, the philosopher Plato wrote two dialogues called Timaeus and Critias. Unlike modern novels, these works were philosophical conversations designed to explore politics, ethics, and the nature of ideal societies. Within these dialogues appears one of history's most famous stories. According to Plato, thousands of years before his own lifetime, beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, there existed an enormous island kingdom. Atlantis. It was said to be larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined. Its capital was unlike anything the ancient world had ever imagined. Concentric rings of land and water surrounded a magnificent royal palace. Massive canals connected the city to the ocean. Ships traveled through carefully engineered harbors. Bridges linked each circular district. Temples shimmered with precious metals. The most magnificent sanctuary honored Poseidon, god of the sea. Inside stood enormous statues covered in gold and ivory. The Atlanteans possessed fertile farmland, advanced irrigation systems, powerful armies, sophisticated laws, and immense natural resources. For generations they prospered, but prosperity gave birth to arrogance. According to Plato, the people of Atlantis abandoned wisdom in favor of greed and conquest. They attempted to dominate neighboring lands, including ancient Athens. Then came divine judgment, in a single terrible day and night. Earthquakes shook the land. Floodwaters surged across the island. The sea swallowed everything. Atlantis disappeared forever beneath the ocean. For centuries, readers accepted the story as philosophy rather than history. After all, Plato often used fictional settings to teach moral lessons. Many scholars still argue this is exactly what Atlantis was, a cautionary tale about pride. A warning that every civilization, even the greatest, can collapse when it abandons virtue. If that's true, the mystery ends here. Except it doesn't, because there is one uncomfortable detail. Plato insisted he wasn't inventing the story. He claimed it had been preserved through generations before reaching him. According to the dialogues, the famous Athenian lawmaker Solon traveled to Egypt around 600 BC. There, Egyptian priests supposedly told him about an ancient civilization destroyed thousands of years earlier. The priests claimed Egyptian temple records had preserved memories reaching far beyond Greek history. Solon intended to write the account, but never completed it. The unfinished story eventually passed through several generations before Plato. This raises an extraordinary possibility. What if Plato wasn't creating Atlantis? What if he inherited fragments of a much older tradition? Historians have debated that question for centuries. No Egyptian document mentioning Atlantis has ever been found. No surviving temple inscription confirms Plato's account. Without independent evidence, many classicists conclude the chain of transmission cannot be verified. Yet oral traditions have preserved surprising historical events before. For generations, scholars dismissed Homer's descriptions of Troy as pure legend. Then, in the 19th century, excavations uncovered the remains of a real Bronze Age city in northwestern Turkey. The discovery transformed archaeology forever. Legends, it turned out, could contain memories of actual places. Not every myth is true. But neither is every myth entirely fictional. Across the world, stories of catastrophic floods appear in remarkably different cultures. From Mesopotamia to India, from indigenous American traditions to East Asia. Entire civilizations remembered overwhelming waters destroying ancient worlds. Some accounts almost certainly describe local disasters. Others may preserve memories from the end of the last ice age, when rising sea levels permanently reshaped coastlines across the globe. Modern geology confirms that between roughly 20,000 and 7,000 years ago, sea levels rose by more than 120 meters as enormous ice sheets melted. Entire coastal plains disappeared. River valleys became seas. Ancient settlements now lie underwater. Human memory often transforms real disasters into stories passed from one generation to another. Could Atlantis be one of those memories? Or is it something entirely different? These questions become even more intriguing when we consider Plato's remarkable description of the city itself. Circular harbors, sophisticated engineering, advanced water management, monumental architecture. For centuries, these details seemed fantastical. Then, archaeologists began excavating one of Europe's greatest Bronze Age civilizations. On an island in the Aegean Sea, they uncovered ruins so advanced that they forced historians to rethink what ancient societies were capable of. And suddenly, Atlantis no longer seemed quite so impossible. The deeper researchers dug into the ancient Mediterranean, the more unexpected connections began to emerge. Some pointed toward a volcanic catastrophe unlike anything Europe had witnessed in recorded history. Others suggested forgotten kingdoms buried beneath layers of ash. Still others hinted that Plato may have woven together fragments from multiple civilizations into one unforgettable story. But before we can judge any of those theories, we first have to meet the civilization that many archaeologists believe inspired the greatest legend ever told. And its destruction would become one of the most violent natural disasters in human history. Long before classical Greece rose to power, long before the Parthenon crowned the Acropolis, an extraordinary civilization flourished across the islands of the Aegean Sea. Today, we know them as the Minoans. Named after the legendary King Minos, the Minoans built one of Europe's first great maritime civilizations between roughly 3000 and 1450 BC. Their influence stretched across the eastern Mediterranean, linking Egypt, the Levant, Anatolia, and mainland Greece through an extensive network of trade. Unlike many ancient societies, the Minoans left behind no grand monuments celebrating military conquest. Instead, archaeologists discovered something unexpected: vibrant frescoes of dolphins, acrobats leaping over bowls, elegant palaces, sophisticated drainage systems, and bustling ports that reflected wealth born from commerce rather than war. When British archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans began excavating the Palace of Knossos on Crete in 1900, he uncovered a world that seemed centuries ahead of its time. Multi-story buildings, stone-paved roads, running water, flushing toilets, complex sewage systems. Colorful murals that still retain traces of brilliant reds and blues after more than 3,000 years. For people living in Bronze Age Europe, these achievements were astonishing. Knossos alone covered several acres, with hundreds of interconnected rooms arranged around a massive central courtyard. Its twisting corridors became so confusing that later Greeks may have transformed memories of the palace into the myth of the labyrinth and the Minotaur. But even more intriguing were the similarities some researchers noticed between the Minoans and Plato's Atlantis. Both were powerful island civilizations. Both dominated maritime trade. Both possessed advanced engineering. Both were wealthy beyond the standards of their age. And both suffered a catastrophic downfall. Could Plato's legendary island have been inspired by the Minoans? The theory gained momentum after one of the greatest geological discoveries of the 20th century. About 70 miles north of Crete lies the crescent-shaped island of Santorini, known in antiquity as Thera. Its dramatic cliffs reveal something remarkable. The island is not naturally crescent-shaped. It is the shattered rim of a colossal volcanic caldera. Around 1600 BC, though the exact date remains debated, Thera experienced one of the largest volcanic eruptions in human history. The explosion dwarfed the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. Some volcanologists estimate it released several times more energy than Krakatoa in 1883. Ash blasted more than 20 miles into the atmosphere. Pyroclastic flows raced across the island at unimaginable speeds. Entire settlements disappeared beneath meters of volcanic debris. The surrounding sea erupted into chaos. Massive tsunamis radiated across the eastern Mediterranean. On nearby coastlines, waves may have reached heights of 30 feet or more. Ports vanished. Ships were smashed against rocky shores. Communities that depended upon maritime trade faced devastation almost overnight. One archaeological site offers an unforgettable snapshot of that disaster. Buried beneath volcanic ash on Santorini lies the ancient city of Akrotiri. Often compared to Pompeii, Akrotiri remained hidden for over 3,000 years. When archaeologists uncovered its streets in the 20th century, they found remarkably preserved buildings, standing 2 and even 3 stories high. Elegant staircases still connected the floors. Storage jars remained in place. Wall paintings depicted flourishing communities, ships sailing across blue waters, monkeys climbing rocky landscapes, and vibrant flowers blooming under Mediterranean sunlight. Unlike Pompeii, however, one detail puzzled researchers. Very few human bodies were discovered. This suggests something extraordinary. The inhabitants may have recognized warning signs before the eruption. Repeated earthquakes likely shook the island for days or even weeks. People may have fled by sea, abandoning homes they expected to return to. Instead, their city disappeared beneath layers of ash that eventually reached more than 100 feet deep in some places. Standing among the ruins today feels eerily modern. Stone streets, apartment buildings. Drainage systems, windows overlooking the harbor. It is difficult to imagine that these structures were built more than 3,500 years ago. For many viewers, Akrotiri looks closer to a forgotten Renaissance town than a Bronze Age settlement. This discovery reignited the Atlantis debate. Perhaps Plato had preserved an exaggerated memory of the Thera eruption. Perhaps stories passed through generations slowly transformed a real volcanic catastrophe into the legend of an entire civilization swallowed by the sea. The idea is compelling, but it comes with significant problems. Plato placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Heracles, west of Gibraltar. Santorini lies deep inside the Mediterranean. Plato also claimed Atlantis disappeared around 9,000 years before Solon's visit to Egypt. The Minoan civilization flourished only about 1,000 years before Solon. Those are enormous differences. Some scholars argue Plato intentionally altered dates and locations for philosophical purposes. Others insist the inconsistencies are too large to ignore. This is where the investigation becomes even more fascinating. Because the Minoan theory is only one possibility, there are others. Some researchers searched beneath the Atlantic Ocean. Others looked toward Spain. Still others pointed to submerged coastlines revealed only by modern sonar and satellite mapping. And each new discovery seemed to deepen the mystery instead of solving it. Before we continue, here's a question for you. What do you think? Was this an advanced civilization lost to time, or is there another explanation? Let us know in the comments. Over the past century, advances in underwater archaeology have transformed our understanding of the ancient world. Entire cities now lie beneath the sea. Not because they were mythical, but because coastlines change. Earthquakes reshape continents. Sea levels rise. Volcanoes erase landscapes. Places once filled with life can disappear beneath the waves without leaving a trace visible from the surface. The ancient port city of Heraklion, for example, lay hidden beneath Egypt's Mediterranean waters for more than 1,200 years before divers rediscovered it. Massive statues, temple ruins, ships frozen in mud, streets preserved beneath layers of sediment. Its rediscovery proved that entire cities really can vanish from history. If Heraklion could disappear, what else might still be waiting beneath the sea? That question has inspired generations of explorers. Some followed ancient maps, others analyzed satellite imagery. Marine archaeologists scanned the ocean floor with sophisticated sonar. Every unusual rock formation, every submerged plateau, every mysterious circular structure. Sparked headlines claiming Atlantis had finally been found, yet time after time. The evidence failed to withstand careful scientific scrutiny. Still, the search continued, because somewhere between myth and history, one possibility refused to disappear. And in the next chapter of our journey, we'll examine the most controversial theories ever proposed, claims that place Atlantis off the coast of Spain. Beneath the Atlantic Ocean, and even beyond the boundaries of the ancient world itself. The search for Atlantis has led explorers into some of the most remote and unexpected places on Earth. From the icy waters of the North Atlantic to the deserts of North Africa. From the coast of Spain to the islands of the Caribbean. Nearly every generation has believed it was finally on the verge of solving history's greatest mystery. But separating evidence from imagination has never been easy. One of the most widely discussed theories points to the marshlands of southern Spain. Just north of the city of Cadiz lies the vast wetland known as Doñana National Park. To most visitors, it appears to be nothing more than a beautiful landscape of lagoons, sand dunes, and marshes. But beneath layers of sediment, some researchers believe there may be traces of an ancient civilization lost to flooding thousands of years ago. The idea gained international attention when satellite imagery and ground surveys revealed circular and rectangular formations buried beneath the wetlands. To some, the patterns seem to echo Plato's description of concentric rings surrounding Atlantis. Could these be the remains of the legendary city? Professional archaeologists urge caution. Natural geological processes often create surprisingly symmetrical formations. Rivers shift course, coastlines change, and sediments settle into patterns that can resemble human construction. While the region was home to important ancient cultures, most notably the mysterious civilization of Tartessos, no excavation has uncovered evidence confirming Plato's Atlantis. Tartessos itself is a fascinating mystery. Mentioned by Greek writers as a wealthy kingdom beyond the Pillars of Heracles, Tartessos flourished in southern Iberia during the first millennium BC. It traded precious metals with Phoenicians and Greeks and became famous for its prosperity. Then, almost as suddenly as it appeared in historical records, it vanished. Some historians suggest Plato may have blended stories of Tartessos with older Mediterranean traditions, creating the unforgettable narrative of Atlantis. Again, the evidence is intriguing, but it is far from conclusive. Another theory reaches much farther into the Atlantic Ocean. Supporters point toward the Azores, a chain of volcanic islands nearly halfway between Europe and North America. Because these islands rise from the mid-Atlantic ridge, some have imagined they are the remaining peaks of a much larger continent that once stood above sea level. At first glance, the idea sounds dramatic, but modern geology tells a different story. The Earth's crust beneath the Atlantic has been extensively mapped. Plate tectonics explains how the ocean basin formed over millions of years as continents slowly drifted apart. There is no geological evidence for a recently submerged continent in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The Azores themselves are volcanic islands created by tectonic activity, not the mountaintops of a vanished superisland. For most geologists, this theory can be confidently ruled out, yet Atlantis continues to attract extraordinary claims. In the 1960s, divers exploring near the island of Bimini in the Bahamas discovered an unusual arrangement of massive limestone blocks beneath shallow water. The formation became known as the Bimini Road. To believers, it looked unmistakably artificial. Could these enormous stones be the remains of an ancient harbor, a seawall, or perhaps part of Atlantis itself? Marine geologists have spent decades studying the site. Their conclusion is less sensational but strongly supported by evidence. These stones appear to be beach rock, a natural type of limestone that fractures into remarkably straight lines. Over time, erosion can separate these blocks into formations that resemble human construction. While debate continues among enthusiasts, the overwhelming scientific consensus is that the Bimini Road is a natural geological feature. It is another reminder of how easily the human mind searches for patterns. Sometimes nature creates shapes so regular that they seem impossible to be accidental, but appearances alone are never enough. That same principle has guided archaeologists investigating underwater discoveries around the world. Modern sonar has revealed submerged river valleys, drowned coastlines, and ancient settlements beneath today's oceans. One remarkable example lies beneath the North Sea. Thousands of years ago, during the last ice age, Britain was connected to mainland Europe by a vast stretch of fertile land. Today, archaeologists call it Doggerland. It was once inhabited by hunter-gatherers who hunted deer, fished its rivers, and built lives on a landscape that no longer exists. As glaciers melted, rising seas gradually consumed the region. What had once been forests and plains became the seafloor. Fishing boats occasionally recover prehistoric tools, animal bones, and even traces of ancient human occupation from beneath the waves. Doggerland demonstrates something profound. Entire landscapes can disappear without leaving visible traces above water. Human history is filled with places that no longer exist on maps. That realization has changed archaeology forever. Instead of asking whether cities can vanish beneath the sea, researchers now ask how many already have. And nowhere has this transformation been more dramatic than along the Mediterranean coast, from Greece to Turkey, from Egypt to Israel. Ancient harbors now rest several meters underwater due to earthquakes, subsidence, and rising sea levels. The legendary city of Heracleion remained hidden beneath the Mediterranean for over a millennium before its rediscovery revealed colossal statues, temples, inscriptions, and dozens of shipwrecks preserved in mud. Each discovery reminds us that history is often stranger than fiction. Cities disappear, kingdoms collapse, memories fade, legends survive. But Atlantis occupies a unique place among them, because no single discovery has ever matched Plato's description completely. Instead, researchers find fragments, a disaster here, an advanced civilization there, a submerged settlement somewhere else. It is almost as though the legend is a mosaic assembled from many different pieces of history. Some scholars believe this may be exactly what Plato intended. Rather than describing one specific civilization, he may have combined elements from several real cultures: the Minoans, Egyptian traditions, stories of floods, memories of lost kingdoms like Tartessos, and shaped them into a philosophical warning about the rise and fall of civilizations. If so, Atlantis becomes more than history. It becomes a mirror. Every generation sees its own fears reflected in the story. For the ancient Greeks, it warned against imperial ambition. For Victorians, it represented a forgotten golden age. For the modern world, it raises uncomfortable questions about climate change, natural disasters, and the fragility of even the most advanced societies. But there is one final piece of the puzzle. Why has Atlantis endured for more than 2,000 years when countless other legends have faded into obscurity? The answer may have less to do with archaeology and more to do with ourselves. Because whether Atlantis existed or not, the story continues to reveal something timeless about humanity. And that may be the greatest mystery of all. There is an old saying among archaeologists: the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It is a reminder that history is incomplete. Every year, new discoveries reshape what we believe we know about the ancient world. Entire cities once thought mythical have been uncovered. Forgotten languages have been deciphered. Ancient shipwrecks have revealed thriving trade networks beneath the sea. Civilizations dismissed as legends have emerged from beneath layers of sand, ash, and water. But there is another saying that is just as important: extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And that principle lies at the heart of the Atlantis debate. After more than 2,000 years of searching, no archaeological discovery has conclusively identified Plato's Atlantis. No submerged city matches his description. No ancient inscription confirms its existence. No Egyptian record independently verifies the story passed down to Solon. The evidence simply isn't there, at least not yet. That is why the overwhelming majority of historians and archaeologists remain cautious. Many view Atlantis as a philosophical creation, designed by Plato to illustrate how power, wealth, and moral corruption can destroy even the greatest civilization. In this interpretation, Atlantis was never intended to be found. Its true purpose was to make readers reflect on their own society. But history is rarely that simple. Again and again, archaeology has reminded us that myths sometimes preserve echoes of real events. The city of Troy was once dismissed as fiction until excavations revealed its ruins beneath a hill in modern-day Turkey. The palace at Knossos uncovered an advanced Bronze Age civilization that few imagined existed before Arthur Evans began digging. Akrotiri emerged from volcanic ash with streets, buildings, and frescoes so well preserved that they transformed our understanding of the ancient Mediterranean. Even Heraklion, an Egyptian port city described by ancient writers, remained hidden beneath the sea until underwater archaeologists rediscovered it in the 21st century. Each discovery teaches the same lesson: legends should not be accepted without evidence. But neither should they be dismissed without investigation. That balance between skepticism and curiosity is what drives archaeology forward. Perhaps Plato exaggerated a real catastrophe. Perhaps he combined several historical memories into one unforgettable narrative. Or perhaps Atlantis was entirely fictional, a masterpiece of philosophy so compelling that generations mistook it for history. None of those possibilities diminish the importance of the story. In fact, they make it even more remarkable. Because Atlantis has become something larger than a lost city, it has become a symbol. A symbol of civilizations rising to extraordinary heights, a symbol of human ambition. A symbol of technological achievement, and ultimately, a symbol of how quickly everything we build can disappear. That message feels surprisingly modern. Today, millions of people live in coastal cities vulnerable to rising seas. Powerful earthquakes continue to reshape entire regions. Volcanoes remain capable of altering the global climate. Natural disasters still remind humanity that no civilization is immune to the forces of nature. The Atlanteans, whether real or imagined, believed their greatness would last forever. History tells a different story. Egypt declined. Rome fell. The Maya abandoned magnificent cities. The Khmer Empire faded into the jungle. Even the greatest civilizations leave behind only fragments, broken columns, weathered inscriptions, scattered pottery, and questions. Perhaps that is why Atlantis continues to fascinate us. It is not merely a search for a city. It is a search for our own past, for proof that human history is deeper, stranger, and more interconnected than we have yet discovered. Every underwater expedition, every archaeological excavation, every newly translated inscription carries the possibility, however small, that another piece of the puzzle may emerge. Imagine standing on the deck of a research vessel as sonar reveals an unfamiliar shape beneath the waves. Stone walls, ancient foundations, a harbor long buried beneath layers of sediment. Would it finally answer the question that has endured for more than 23 centuries, or would it simply raise even more questions? History has a way of doing exactly that. Every answer uncovers another mystery. And perhaps that is why Atlantis refuses to disappear, not because we have found it, but because we have never stopped looking. In the end, there are three possibilities. The first is that Atlantis was entirely fictional, a brilliant allegory created by Plato to warn future generations about pride, corruption, and the abuse of power. The second is that the story preserves distorted memories of real Bronze Age disasters, especially the eruption of Thera and the decline of the Minoan civilization. Over centuries, oral traditions may have blended these events into a single, unforgettable legend. The third possibility is the most intriguing. Somewhere beneath the sea, or beneath layers of forgotten earth, the remains of an unknown civilization still wait to be discovered, not exactly as Plato described it, but close enough to reveal the historical spark that ignited the greatest legend ever told. At present, no theory has been proven beyond doubt, and that is precisely what makes Atlantis one of history's greatest mysteries. The evidence is incomplete. The debate continues. The search goes on. So now the question passes to you. Do you believe Atlantis was a real civilization lost to time, a story inspired by real historical disasters, or simply one of the greatest philosophical myths ever written? Tell us which theory you find most convincing and why in the comments below. If ancient mysteries fascinate you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Chronicle Nexus, and share it with fellow explorers. Every discovery brings us one step closer to understanding the forgotten chapters of our past, and there are many more mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Until our next journey. Keep asking questions, keep following the evidence, and keep exploring the place where history meets mystery. Because sometimes the greatest discoveries are the ones we haven't made yet.